My cheating fiancé went on a date with her lover and asked me to ignore it because it meant nothing, so I ignored our entire relationship. Be me, 29-year-old Nathan. Married to Victoria for 9 years. Living in Tampa, Florida. Life used to be good. There was a sharp click of the front door lock. Hear her heels on the marble floor. Not fast, not slow, just deliberate. Victoria always walked like she expected people to look up. Like the hallway was a runway. Tonight, the silence between us thicker than concrete. She still strutted past me with her chin high, twisting the little silver bracelet around her wrist, like it was a nervous tick. Only she wasn't nervous. Not even close. She stopped near the mirror in the hallway, touched up her lipstick. Crimson red. She hadn't worn red in years. Not since our 3rd anniversary in Miami. Back then she wore it for me. Tonight it wasn't for me. You're going out? I asked from the living room. Wasn't pretending to read anymore. The book was open in my lap, but I hadn't turned the page in 25 minutes. She didn't look at me, just smirked into the mirror. Relax, she said, grabbing her purse from the table. It's only a date. I didn't respond. Not right away. Just sat there and watched her. Hallway light threw long shadows across her shoulders. It was deliberate. Every word, every step. Like she wanted to be caught. No, not caught. Zena. She turned around like she expected me to yell. Fight, slam something. But I didn't. Instead, I got up slowly. Walked into the kitchen. Removed my ring. I didn't throw it. I didn't curse. Just laid it down on the counter next to the dish rack. Pressed it there with my thumb until it stopped spinning. She didn't ask what I was doing. She didn't even blink. The door closed behind her. Victoria and I met 11 years ago at a friend's wedding. She was a firecracker back then. Bold, sharp. Had this laugh that could silence a room, draw every eye to her. I liked that she was wild. I liked that she was unpredictable. What I didn't realize is that wild doesn't always mean loyal. And unpredictable doesn't stop just because there's a ring involved. The first few years of marriage were honestly good. Not perfect, but good. We took road trips, had long, messy, passionate fights, and longer reconciliations. She'd surprise me at work with lunch, leave notes in my bag when I traveled. She made everything electric. Until she didn't. It wasn't one big thing at first. It was slow, like a leak in the wall. You don't notice until the whole room smells like mildew. She stopped laughing at my jokes. Her texts got shorter. She started staying out late, saying she lost track of time. She began locking her phone, turning it face down. Stopped reaching for my hand when we sat in the car. All little things until they weren't. One night I asked her if she still loved me. She didn't even answer with words. Just sighed like I was being dramatic. Went back to scrolling through her phone. That was 4 months ago. I remember because that was the night I started sleeping with my back to her. She used to be warm at night. Used to reach out in her sleep, tuck her legs between mine like puzzle pieces. Now the bed is just 2 people facing away, separated by sheets and silence. I should have known something was going on sooner. Victoria doesn't do neutral. She's hot or cold, and lately every time she looked at me, her eyes had that tired practice patience. Like I was a coworker she barely tolerated. And then tonight happened. Tonight she looked beautiful. That's the worst part. The dress was midnight blue. No, she didn't ask me how it looked, because she didn't care what I thought. The perfume she wore was heavier than usual. A scent I hadn't smelled on her before. I didn't recognize it, but I recognized the intention. She was dressing for someone, and it wasn't me. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't ask who with, because I already knew. Not the name, maybe not yet, but the posture, the defiance. The way she left like she wanted the door to slam. Just loud enough for me to feel it. I sat down at the kitchen table, looked at the ring, caught the light still warm from my hand. 9 years? 9 years of trying, of forgiving, of telling myself she was just stressed or tired or wired different. 9 years of brushing off the gut punches as misunderstandings. She said, it's only a date. And for the first time I realized I wasn't married to a woman I didn't know. I was married to a woman who didn't care if I knew. That I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, one arm folded behind my head, the other where her body used to be. Her side of the mattress was untouched. Sheets smoothed perfectly, like they'd been made in a hotel room. I kept looking over like she might walk in. Say it was a joke. Say she made it all up. That it was a test or a scene from some dramatic podcast she was obsessed with. But the silence held, and the clock ticked past midnight. Then 1, then 2. I watched the numbers like I was waiting for something that would never arrive. Around 2:47 a.m., the headlights swept across the bedroom wall. I didn't move, just listened. Her key in the door, her shoes on the marble, the whisper of fabric as she slipped them off. There was no guilt in the way she moved, no hesitation, not even the courtesy of quiet. She came into the bedroom humming like a woman returning from a night of dancing. Not someone who just stepped out of her marriage. She saw me awake and blinked, like I was the one intruding. You're still up? She asked, slipping out of the dress with zero effort to hide herself. Tossing it over the chair where my jacket had hung 3 days too long. She moved to the bathroom and wiped off her makeup, still talking like this was normal. I said nothing. She noticed. Her tone shifted, a little edge sliding under the surface. Oh, come on, don't do this. I told you it was just a date. She walked back in, barefaced now. Robe hanging open like modesty was a thing of the past. You're seriously mad? She said, voice raised, eyes narrowing. I told you I needed to feel alive again. You said you wanted me to be happy. Or did you only mean that when I was miserable with you? I still didn't say a word. She scoffed. God, you're so dramatic, Nathan. She climbed into bed. Not her side, not mine. Just sprawled across the middle like she owned the air. That was the moment it hit me. Not with rage, not even sadness. Just something else. Something hollow. I didn't recognize this woman. She used to ask about my day. Now she was asking me to excuse hers. I turned away. Didn't want to see her. Didn't want to smell the cologne she came home wearing. That wasn't mine. She muttered something under her breath. Maybe my name. Maybe not. And within 5 minutes, she was asleep. Just like that, as if nothing happened. I lay there staring at the wall and thought about the last time she'd kissed me. Not out of obligation. Not the peck before work kind. The real kind. Couldn't remember. In the dark, the ring sat on the counter downstairs, and I knew without even touching it again that I wouldn't be putting it back on. The morning came, pale and silent. Victoria was already gone when I opened my eyes. No note, no text, no sound of a car engine. Just the smell of her perfume faintly clinging to the sheets, and a half-empty bottle of apple juice left on the counter. Sweating into a ring on the wood. I didn't go into work. Couldn't. My body went through the motions. Shower, coffee, toast. But my head was somewhere else. My phone buzzed twice around 10 with emails, but I ignored them. My mind was stuck playing back last night on an endless loop. Every word, every second. The way she said just a date. Like our entire life together was an old sweater she could toss in the back of the closet. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was having some midlife meltdown. Maybe this was her version of rebellion. But the truth was uglier and I knew it. I spent the morning pacing. At 11:18, I opened her laptop. She rarely used it anymore. Said her phone was easier. But the thing still auto-connected to our home Wi-Fi. I don't know what I was looking for. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. I didn't have to dig. There were messages. Dozens. A browser tab left open with some sleek booking confirmation. For a cabin 2 hours away. 2 names on the receipt. Hers and someone named Blake. That was it. Not Victoria and Nathan. Not a couple's weekend. Just her and Blake. This man she hadn't once mentioned. No explanation. No context. Just the glaring truth. She was planning a getaway. A romantic one. Without me. The messages were worse. I read 3. That was all I could stomach. She called him B, said he made her feel like herself again. Said she wished she had met him before. All the mess. That line hit harder than any punch I've ever taken. All the mess. That's what I was to her. Our house, our memories, our promises. Just mess. I closed the laptop. I sat in the kitchen for 35 straight minutes, staring at the floor, hands balled into fists. I wanted to throw something. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just sat there, heart hammering like a war drum. Breathing like I'd run 5 miles. Around noon, she texted me. 1 line. Don't wait up tonight. No apology, no context. Just that. I stared at it for a long time before replying. I won't. That was the moment something shifted in me. The man who had been patient, forgiving, endlessly hopeful. He left. What remained was someone colder, clearer, and tired of pretending. I started gathering things. Not hers. Mine. I pulled out a duffel from the closet and began folding clothes like I was packing for a long trip. But I wasn't going anywhere. Not yet. I just needed to do something. I needed control. I put her wedding dress, the one she insisted on keeping in the guest closet for memory's sake, into a vacuum-sealed bag and tossed it in the garage. Memory indeed. Then I sat down and wrote a letter. Not a goodbye letter. Just a record of who she had become, of what I had let slide. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel confused. I felt ready. By the time she came home that night, I had already decided I wasn't going to play her game anymore. No more pretending. No more silence. No more letting her speak in riddles. While I decoded pain like it was some kind of puzzle, I owed her the courtesy to solve. It was past midnight again. This time I didn't wait in the bedroom. I was sitting in the kitchen at the table, under that dim overhead light that buzzed faintly when it got too hot. I had my laptop open, not for show. I was logged into our shared bank account, staring at the transactions. She didn't see me at first. I heard the door unlock. Her laugh not forced or fake, but light. Hi. The kind I hadn't heard in years filtered in from the entryway. And then a pause. No second voice. Just the clink of her keys landing in the ceramic bowl. Her heels coming off. The shuffle of feet. She didn't bother to hide anymore. When she turned the corner and saw me, she blinked. Oh, she said flatly. You're up? I didn't move. Where were you? Victoria rolled her eyes and leaned on the wall, like she was the one being wronged. You really want to do this again? No, I said calmly. I want the truth. She scoffed, but I didn't flinch. She had used that scoff for years to minimize, to escape. Not tonight. Dinner, drinks. Blake had a rough week. she said, as if I should care, as if this was normal. I nodded. So you're calling it what it is now? You're just saying it. What? She asked, arms crossed. Now a date. She stared at me for a second, and then the mask cracked just a bit. What difference does it make? You've known... You're just looking for a reason to be dramatic. I set my phone down. Victoria, you're cheating on me. She flinched. Just a tiny twitch in her jaw. Then she laughed. Actually laughed. You call it cheating? She said, walking toward the fridge and pulling out a bottle of wine, like we were having a dinner party. You checked out years ago, Nathan. Don't pretend like you're some wounded saint. That stopped me cold. I checked out. She poured a glass without asking if I wanted one. She hadn't asked me anything in months, and took a long sip. Yeah, you work, you sleep, you don't do anything anymore. You don't make me feel anything. At least Blake listens. It was the first time she said his name out loud. Blake. She said it like he was an old friend. Like she hadn't just detonated our entire marriage, and walked away from the rubble in designer boots. And that justifies this? I asked. Lying to me? Sneaking around? She rolled her eyes again. I didn't sneak, I told you. My laugh was hollow. You told me after you already crossed every line. Her face twisted. Annoyed that I wouldn't let her rewrite the story. You just don't want to admit that you're boring, she said, almost spitting it. I needed more. You gave me less. The words hung in the air like smoke. Thick, bitter. She walked past me, glass in hand, and sat on the couch, just like that. Conversation over. Like nothing was wrong. Like we were just two roommates with incompatible sleep schedules. I stared at her. Something inside me, something soft, something hopeful. Cracked, not shattered. Cracked because the shattering would come later. I want a separation, I said finally, the words leaving my mouth like cold steel. She didn't even look surprised. She didn't flinch. Not when I said the word, not even when I said it again. Slower, like maybe she hadn't understood the first time. I want a separation. She took another sip of her wine and let the silence stretch between us. The kind of silence that feels heavy. Not awkward, weaponized. Then she said without looking up. Fine. That was it. No shock, no protest, not even a fake tear. Just fine. Like I'd offered to sleep in the guest room for the night. Not separate our lives. I stood there feeling something I couldn't quite name. It wasn't anger. I'd moved past that. It was deeper, uglier. A kind of mourning. Not for her, but for the man I used to be. When I thought she loved me. I'll talk to a lawyer this week, I said, my voice steady. We'll figure out the house. And Rudy. That got her attention. She turned sharply. You're not taking the dog. Of course I'm taking him, I said. You leave him alone all the time. She laughed. Cruel. Bitter. You think you're the hero here? You're not. I don't care about being the hero. I care about being free. That hit something. Her face twitched. She stood, walked toward me slowly. Wine still in hand. Her voice suddenly softer, but not sincere. So that's it? She asked. You're done. I looked her in the eyes, for what felt like the first time in months. No, I said. You were done. I'm just catching up. She opened her mouth like she was about to launch into something. Maybe a guilt trip, maybe a tantrum. But I didn't wait to hear it. I walked past her into the bedroom, closed the door. I didn't sleep again. I lay on top of the covers and stared at the ceiling, listening to her in the next room. At one point, she turned on the TV. I heard laughter, a show she used to beg me to watch with her. I used to say yes even when I didn't want to. Now she watched alone. In the dark, I thought about all the times. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. All the nights I convinced myself that she was just tired, just stressed, just figuring things out. How many lies had I swallowed just to keep the peace? That night I made a list of everything. The nights she worked late but never brought her laptop home. The weekend retreat that had no itinerary and no contact. The sudden wardrobe changes. The new underwear. The cologne that wasn't mine. The passwords changed without reason. The names she never mentioned but always smiled at on her phone. The dates, the ones she now admitted to. By the time the sun rose, I had filled 2 pages. And I realized something else. It wasn't about Blake. Not really. It was about her. Victoria had been gone long before she physically left. The following morning came with a strange quiet. Not the peaceful kind, but the kind that feels loaded. Like the stillness before a thunderstorm. Victoria was still asleep on the couch. Wine glass half finished on the coffee table. TV remote clutched in her hand. A rerun of something cheerful was still playing. The kind of show that made it easier to ignore your life. I didn't wake her. I didn't leave a note. I just grabbed Rudy's leash, my keys, and drove. I didn't have a destination in mind. I just needed space. Space from the house. From the smell of her perfume that still clung to the curtains. From the couch where she curled up like she was single again. I drove for nearly 2 hours before pulling over. At an empty lakeside trail where Rudy and I used to walk. When we first got him, back when she still came along. Still held my hand. Still laughed at nothing. He bounded out of the car like nothing was wrong. Tongue out, tail wagging. Because dogs don't know betrayal. They just know presence. I sat on a bench overlooking the water and tried to breathe. The truth had settled now. She had chosen someone else over time. Over honesty. Over me. And the most sickening part of it all wasn't that she'd done it. It was how easily she did it, how she didn't look back, how she had already rewritten the story in her head, where I was the villain, and she was the misunderstood heroine, just trying to feel alive. At noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. So you're just going to disappear now? Real mature? I stared at it. The audacity of it. No apology, no regret. No sign that she'd spent even a second thinking about what she'd done. Just blame. Like I was the one breaking something sacred. I didn't answer. She sent another 10 minutes later. If you don't want to work on this, just say it. Don't play the martyr. That one made me laugh out loud. Actually laugh. Sharp and bitter. Work on what? I wanted to ask. She hadn't wanted to work on anything. When she slipped into someone else's car at night, she only wanted to work on it now. That she realized I wasn't playing the role she assigned me. The forgiving, quiet husband, who'd take her back with a sigh and a glass of wine. But that man was gone. I turned off my phone. That afternoon I sat with Rudy and made a plan. Not a dramatic one. Not the kind that comes with ultimatums or yelling, just a list. Clean, simple, surgical. Talk to a divorce attorney. Secure my finances. Get my name off the joint accounts. Arrange a place to stay temporarily. Take Rudy. Non-negotiable. And one last item I circled 3 times. Do not let her rewrite the narrative. Because Victoria would try. Women like her always did. They'd turn betrayal into poetry. And blame into self-care. She would call me bitter, distant, emotionally unavailable. But none of those things would change the truth. She chose someone else. She lied. And I was done giving her more chances than she gave me. I came back just after sunset. The house was dim. The only light coming from the kitchen, where Victoria sat, legs crossed on the counter stool, like she hadn't been throwing grenades at our marriage for weeks. She had a glass of wine again. She always had a glass of wine these days. Her armor, her excuse, her ceremony. You finally decided to come home, she said without looking at me. I dropped Rudy's leash and let him run to his bed. I didn't answer. She turned, leaned against the counter, arms folded. So what now, Nathan? You storm off, ignore me all day, and then what? We pretend we're still a team. I stepped closer, but not too close. Close enough to see the flicker in her eyes. When she realized I wasn't going to play the part she expected. There is no we anymore, I said. I just came back to tell you what happens next. She blinked, and for the first time since this whole thing began, she hesitated. A moment of silence. Uncertainty. The power she held, the smirks, the taunts, the casual cruelty. It slipped just a little. I'm filing, I said flatly. Separation, divorce. Whatever version gets this done. You're serious? Her voice rose. Dead serious. She set her wine down harder than she needed to. The glass clinking against granite. Wow, you really are a coward. That was the trigger. That word. Coward. I stepped forward. No. A coward is someone who lies to their husband for months. A coward is someone who sneaks around at night, and then has the audacity to act offended when they're caught. A coward is someone who calls it just a date, and expects me to smile through it. She opened her mouth, but I wasn't finished. You think I checked out? You pushed me out? You didn't want a partner. You wanted an audience. Her face hardened. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own home. I nearly laughed. Victoria, you weren't invisible. You were just bored. And instead of talking, instead of trying, you decided to rewrite the rules and blame me when I didn't applaud. She grabbed her wine again, hands shaking now. The first real crack in the porcelain. You're twisting things. No, I said, calmer now. I'm just seeing clearly for the first time in a long time. She went quiet. She looked away. And that's when I realized something brutal and liberating. She didn't expect me to leave. She thought I'd rage, threaten, maybe cry, but not leave, because deep down Victoria believed I needed her more than she ever needed me. And now faced with the truth that I didn't, she had nothing left to say. I turned and walked toward the hallway. As I reached the bedroom door, she called after me. You'll regret this. I paused, but didn't turn. No, I said, but you might. The next morning was eerily quiet. No accusations, no passive-aggressive remarks, no slamming of doors. Victoria avoided me. I could hear her movements from across the house. The clink of coffee cups, the shuffle of bags, the quick pacing of someone who didn't want to be seen, but needed to be noticed. She left without saying goodbye. I took that time to make calls. By 10 a.m. I had spoken to a divorce attorney, named Carla Jensen. Professional, direct, no sugarcoating. She listened as I laid out everything. The lying, the emotional abandonment, the infidelity. And then asked me the one question I had been avoiding since this started. Do you want to fight for this? The answer came out before I even thought about it. No. That afternoon I started pulling things from drawers. Not hers, just mine. Old receipts, statements, documents. My grandmother's watch she'd stuffed in a shoebox under the bed. Little fragments of who I was before Victoria. Convinced me to lose myself for the sake of peace. I sat down and created a file. Labeled it Victoria Exit. I added every piece of evidence I had. Photos of the messages I'd seen. Screen captures of the cabin booking. Even bank statements with her late-night charges. From restaurants I'd never been to. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. Victoria had always had a way of spinning things, turning arguments into accusations, transforming facts into feelings. I knew how this would go once papers hit her inbox. She'd cry to her friends, claim I was cold, say I gave up, say I didn't try. This time I wouldn't be left without receipts. She came home later than usual. Around 8:30. I was on the back porch, Rudy lying at my feet, the sky that burnt orange color that only happens in August. She stepped outside without asking if she could. "You're really doing this?" she asked quietly. I didn't look at her. "Yeah, I am." She stayed silent for a long time. "You know, for a while," she said finally, "I thought you'd just accept it, that we'd settle into something new. You'd do your thing, I'd do mine. And we'd keep the house, keep the life." I turned to her then. "That's not marriage, Victoria. That's survival. And I stopped surviving the minute you started living like I didn't exist." Her eyes welled up, but I wasn't moved. "I don't hate you," I added, "but I can't stay with someone who lies this easily, who cheats and calls it clarity, who disrespects me and calls it growth." She looked like she wanted to argue, to fight, to say something sharp that would make me crack. But nothing came, because deep down she knew I was right. That night I moved into the guest room, not for her, for me. The master bedroom didn't feel like mine anymore. The smell of her perfume, the sight of her robe draped on the door, the memory of being lied to within those walls. It all needed to stay there. The guest bed was hard. The room was cold. But I slept like I hadn't in weeks, because for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't waiting for her to come home. The next few days felt like walking through the ruins of a city I used to love. Victoria didn't speak much. She hovered, made coffee without asking if I wanted any, cleaned the living room more than usual, left music playing in the background, like we were still trying to be normal. But the performances didn't move me anymore. I saw it for what it was. Desperation in disguise. She hadn't expected this version of me. The quiet, the calm, the certainty. She expected tears screaming a breakdown. But what she got instead was a man who had finally stopped bleeding. For a woman who never brought bandages. On Thursday, I served her the initial paperwork. She came home and found the envelope on the kitchen counter, with her name typed across the top. No note, no explanation. She stormed into the guest room 20 minutes later, papers in hand, cheeks flushed red. "Are you serious?" she hissed. I looked up from my laptop. "Completely. You could have talked to me first." "I did," I said, voice level. "For months. You just weren't listening." She dropped the envelope on the floor. "You're really going to make me the villain here?" "You made yourself that..." Her eyes narrowed, and there it was again. That Victoria rage. The one she used when the world didn't applaud her choices. "You think this is all my fault?" "No," I said. "But the part where you decided to date someone else, while married to me, that's all yours." "I didn't date him," she said quickly. I tilted my head. "Cabin booking, shared dinners, late nights, lying to me. What would you call it?" She stared at me like she wanted to slap me, or maybe cry. But she didn't do either. She just stood there breathing hard, chest rising and falling, like she was working up the nerve to play the victim again. "You know what?" she said finally. "You were always so obsessed with being the good guy. With being calm and logical and perfect. It's exhausting." I closed the laptop slowly and stood up. "Maybe, but at least I didn't destroy the person who loved me. To chase a thrill I'll forget in a year." Her face crumbled, but not because I hurt her. No, because I didn't. Because she realized the one power she used to hold, her ability to wound me, was gone. I walked past her. No anger, no shouting. Just a man done. She didn't follow me, didn't call my name. Just stood there in the doorway, holding the papers like they were a verdict she hadn't expected. That night I made one final addition to the list I'd been keeping in my notebook since this started. August 8th, she finally saw what I've seen for months. I'm not hers anymore. 2 days later, Victoria packed a bag. No warning, no ceremony. I came back from walking Rudy, to find her in the master bedroom, tossing clothes into a black duffel, like she was late for a flight. Her movements were sharp, quick, aggressive, like every shirt folded was an argument. She was trying not to have... I leaned against the doorframe, said nothing. She didn't look at me. "I'm going to my sister's," she said finally. "Okay," I replied. She paused, waiting for a plea. For a fight, for something. When none came, she turned toward me, arms crossed. "You're not even going to ask me to stay?" I met her eyes steady. "No, because I'm not trying to convince someone to love me anymore." Her jaw clenched. "That's not fair." "You're right," I said. "Fair would have been honesty, loyalty, respect. You gave me none of those." She looked away, and for a second I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Maybe guilt, maybe panic, or maybe just the realization that this wasn't a bluff. I wasn't chasing her. She zipped the bag. "You act like you've been perfect this whole time," she snapped. "I haven't," I said. "But I've been present. I showed up every day. You left months ago. You just took your body with you." Her lip trembled, and for the first time since this started, I saw Victoria genuinely shaken. Not because she missed me, but because she had finally lost her grip on the story. The one where I was passive, forgettable, too forgiving to leave. Now I was leaving. She hoisted the bag over her shoulder and pushed past me. "No goodbye. Just keys in hand, door slamming shut. The silence that followed wasn't painful. It was a relief. I fed Rudy, made myself dinner, sat on the couch and turned on the TV. Without having to ask if she minded the noise, I didn't think about where she was, or who she was with. For the first time in forever, the house was still, not in that suffocating way, but in a clean way, like something toxic had finally been aired out. At 9:47 p.m., I got a text from an unknown number. "She's not who you think she is. You deserve better. Sorry it took me this long." I stared at it, stunned. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. The truth had already unfolded layer by layer, and now it was crumbling all around her. Apparently even Blake figured it out eventually. I never replied to Blake. I didn't need to. His message wasn't for me. It was a confession to himself, a thread unraveling on the other side of the story. Whatever fantasy Victoria had built with him clearly didn't hold up under reality. I imagined it cracked in the same way our marriage had, but faster, louder, and with fewer excuses. He saw her clearly now. Maybe not as a monster, but as someone reckless enough to ruin whatever touched her. Without blinking. She didn't come home that night or the next. I didn't ask where she was. I didn't call her sister. The silence became familiar. Not warm, not cruel, just honest, the kind of silence that doesn't lie to you. I started packing what was mine for good. Every photo where we smiled but didn't mean it. Boxed. Every gift she gave me after a fight. Gone. The couch we picked out together stayed. I didn't care about taking furniture anymore. I just wanted distance. The lawyer called. The documents were in motion. She would be served officially next week. I felt nothing when I heard that. Not sadness, not satisfaction. Just forward motion. I cleaned the garage on Saturday. Found an old shoebox behind the paint cans. It was filled with cards Victoria had written me over the years. Birthdays, anniversaries. Little notes from before everything soured. I sat on the floor and read one from our second year of marriage. It said, "You're the safest place I've ever known." I stared at that line for a long time. Because I believed her. Because I was... Until she lit the place on fire and blamed the smoke on me. I burned the box. Not for drama, not for revenge, but because I didn't want to carry lies into my next life. I didn't want to keep evidence of a story that had already collapsed under its own weight. Later that evening, she texted, "Can we talk?" No apology, no explanation. Just a vague rope thrown out to see if I'd pull her back. I didn't answer. An hour later, another message. "You're being cold. We shared a life." That one made me pause. Yes, we shared a life, but I built it. I maintained it. I carried it when she walked away in everything but name. She shared the benefits, not the burden. I didn't respond. The next morning I blocked her number. That was the moment I knew I was free. Not because she was gone, but because I no longer wanted her back. Victoria was served the papers on a Tuesday. I wasn't there when it happened. I didn't need to be. The lawyer handled it. All I got was a confirmation email. And with it, the last thread tying me to a woman I no longer recognized began to fray. That evening I sat in my new apartment. It wasn't much. Small kitchen, cheap blinds. A view of the back of another building. But it was mine. Clean, untouched, no ghosts in the walls. No lies curled into the sheets. Just me, a battered coffee table, a mattress on the floor, and Rudy snoring like a chainsaw in the corner. And it was quiet. Not the tense silence of a dying relationship. Not the silence filled with things left unsaid. But a true, honest kind of peace. A silence that didn't demand explanation. A silence that allowed space to breathe. I thought I'd feel empty, alone. Maybe even regretful. But all I felt was steady. I had done what needed to be done. I walked away when it would have been easier to stay bitter. I chose clarity over chaos. And while Victoria would probably tell her version, to anyone who'd listen, where I was cold, distant, unreachable, I didn't care. Because I knew the truth. I gave her years of chances. I gave her time, grace, love, forgiveness. I gave her myself in full. And she gambled that I never would leave. But I did. She said, "Relax, it's only a date." She wanted to hurt me. But what she really did was set me free. Now I wear no ring. Not because I lost something, but because I learned something. Loyalty isn't owed to someone who spits on it. Love doesn't excuse betrayal. And no matter how long you invest in someone, the second they stop valuing you, really valuing you, is the second you have permission to walk away. Without apology. So here's my advice to anyone reading this. Wondering if they're crazy. Wondering if maybe they're asking too much. For honesty, for effort, for respect. You're not. If your gut is screaming, listen. If the story doesn't make sense, dig deeper. And if someone looks you in the eye and lies again and again, don't wait for the truth to come dressed in flowers. It never will. Some people don't deserve your patience. Some people just don't deserve you. I don't hate Victoria, but I'll never love her again. And that more than anything else. Is the real ending?